Hi there, my name is Anna and I'm with Chez Núñez. In this tutorial, I'm going to share 3 simple ways to design a logo using Chez Núñez fonts and graphics. In this tutorial, I'm going to do my best to keep things as simple as I possibly can in order to show you how you can create a logo with a lot of impact for a small amount of effort. This is a pretty beginner-friendly video, because I think sometimes the strongest logos are also the simplest ones. So no need to be overwhelmed. I'm going to walk you through some easy approaches to logo design. At Chez Núñez, we letter and create all our own fonts by hand. So this process has given us typefaces that have the look and feel of that which was originally lettered by hand because, well, it was when I drew it and turned it into a font. So the beauty of this is that our fonts make it really easy to add an organic hand-touched effect to any design with very minimal effort. So we're going to make use of these fonts in this tutorial in the process of designing these logos. If you want to use different fonts in your application of this material, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you're interested in learning how to design fonts of your own, we have a workshop in our shop at cheznunez.com/shop that will teach you exactly how to do that. We're also going to use Chez Núñez graphics for one of the logos to show you how you can incorporate illustration without needing to know how to draw. As we get started, I thought I'd explain the 3 layouts that we're going to be working with. The first one is called the straightforward layout. I named all of these myself, so bear with me. The straightforward layout is perhaps the simplest to create for your brand. This layout relies heavily on a font that you select, the lettering for your brand. It places heavy emphasis on the name of your business and can also include a descriptive tagline, location, or established year underneath it with smaller type. This layout is useful to have on hand because it fits so nicely in header sections at the top of a website, marketing email, or stationery. The simplicity of this layout makes this style of logo super timeless as well. The second type of logo that we're going to design is called the cherry on top layout. Basically, this layout is the straightforward layout, but with the addition of an illustrative icon above the name of the brand. I love this layout because it offers the viewer a visual cue about the story, the spirit, or the offering of the business, while also giving the logo an interesting and personal touch. It's a high-impact logo with super simple process for creation. And the third layout that we're going to create is called the stacked layout. This logo design typically works best for brands with a 2 or 3 word name, and the creation is about as simple as the straightforward layout design as well. The goal is to rely on the brand typography to really shine in this design, and by stacking the name 1 word on top of the other, it creates a nice bit of balance. This layout tends to work especially well if the 2 words in the brand name are similar in length. So this creates a visual order to the rectangular shape that forms as a result of the layout. All right, let's get started creating these logo designs. First order of business is to open up Adobe Illustrator, and I'm just going to create a new artboard. Illustrator is all in vector graphics, so it doesn't really matter too much what size the artboard is, but I am going to make sure that I'm in RGB color mode. And then I'm going to hit create. For these different logo examples, I've already come up with some fictitious brand names. So the first one is going to be a photographer by the name of Elaine Flowers. Photography can be a subheading. The second business is going to be an Airbnb with a fictitious name called Mountain House. This is going to be in Asheville, North Carolina. And the third business we're going to work on is a blogger by the name of Laura Franz. So these are all pretend names. I'm just going to make this a different font just for fun. And we're going to get started. I have all of the Chez Núñez fonts already downloaded into Adobe Illustrator, so we're going to make use of these. Like I said, these are all originally handmade, so they're just going to give our designs a little bit more originality and an organic touch So I'm also going to pull up my illustrated graphics variety pack from the Chez Núñez shop, and this is just a pack of over 40 different drawings that we'll be able to use in our design. So I have this pulled up over here as well. When you purchase this listing, you'll get a zip file, so I'm going to pretend as if I just purchased these. And these are all of the, I don't know why they're wonky. These are all of the files that we'll be able to work with. So I'll have this opened over here so we can play around with that. I've also gathered up some stock photos as well that we can play with once we have our designs finished and ready to go. So as I mentioned, our first layout that we're going to be working with is just that straightforward layout. So I'm going to work with Elaine Flowers. I'm making it bigger, and I'm just gonna go through the font options that are available to me from the Chez Núñez collection. I think Library is pretty lovely. I'm imagining that Elaine, this fictitious person, does a lot of travel photography. Maybe she shoots on film. Perhaps her brand has a little bit of a vintage vibe to it, so that can influence the style that we're working with. Maybe she's a bit of a wildflower, golden light chasing photographer. So I'm just picking fonts that I think might complement this type of photographer. Someone who is a little bit of a free spirit, loves to travel. And this is what I would typically do whenever I'm choosing fonts. I would just kind of go through and look at all my options. I think the all caps is a really nice option for this. So I'm just going to click on, I just clicked the artboard tool. I hit Shift O, and I'm going to dedicate a separate artboard to each one of these businesses. So I'm going to move this over here. And I could work with any one of these, but I think I'm going to work with this one. This is our Chez Núñez library font. And I'm going to make photography a little subheading, a little tagline. Actually, I don't think I like this one. I'm going to change my mind. I think this one's really speaking to me. So in choosing a tagline, I like choosing something that can complement this well. Sometimes it's a matter of choosing a different style of typography. If this is sans serif, then maybe I want to choose a serif. If this is lowercase, then maybe I want my tagline to be all caps. But I'm actually, because this font has different versions, an outline and a fill, I think it'll work really well if I just use this same font, but in the filled version. See what I mean? So it kind of matches. And then maybe to balance it and create a little more space, I'll make the kerning wider. I could even go extreme to 300. And I'm just gonna let this tagline rest right underneath. I'll go to align, and I'll just align the objects so that they're nice and centered. And then if I like, maybe I'll bring them down here. And I can group them, just Command G, group them. So now we have a lovely logo for Elaine Flowers. I'm just gonna shrink these down. I could maybe delete those, but I don't know, they're kind of nice there. I'll just let this exist here. And now I'm gonna pull one of my stock photos in. Maybe I'll be quite literal about it and I'll pull in an image of flowers. These are just some photos that I've taken over the years and I have on hand. So maybe this one is a little bit more delicate. And I can actually use this photo to draw a color palette out for this fictitious brand. So sometimes I'll do that if I'm just feeling inspired by this image. So I'll go over to the ellipse tool. And I could create a full set of 6 colors, but in this instance, maybe I'll just create a set of 3. I want this to be a little more yellow. Instead of doing a stark black, maybe I'll let this be a softer gray, grayish brown. And then maybe I'll pull in like a light green. Or maybe I'll just do a cream. So now I have some colors drawn out of this photograph. If I'd like, I can use this photograph for a backdrop. Just create a separate artboard around the photo. And I can see what this logo would look like above this picture. It's a little hard to read. So maybe I'll do it in white. And I can align it. Just an option, just something to play around with. And I can just start to play around with different backdrops. I'm just creating shapes. It's a completely different vibe there with the black. I'm duplicating. Maybe I'll change this yellow and make it a little darker now that I'm playing around with it. And I'm using that eyedropper tool a lot. All right. So there we have a nice straightforward, straight across logo that we can use. I don't know if I'll use this image. But if I wanted to, I could have done it in any one of these. All of these fonts make really nice logos, honestly, if I wanted to use this on its own. It's a very simple matter of just picking a font that speaks to you and just letting it be the name. You don't even need the photography section if you just find a font that really speaks to your brand. Then you just type out the name and you're really good to go. To save this out, I would just duplicate this name, click on that artboard tool, select the design to create another artboard, and then this is artboard 3. So then I would go to File, Save As, name it Elaine Flowers, and just save it as a PNG, or you could hit Save As. You could save it as an EPS or a PDF or whatever. All right. So this right here is the the straightforward logo design. And all this requires of you is a strong font choice and the typing of your name. All right, the next thing we're going to work on is going to be the cherry on top logo, like I mentioned. And I'm going to create a separate artboard. So again, with that artboard tool, and just hit the plus sign so I can duplicate it one more time. And now this one is the Mountain House, Asheville, North Carolina. So I'm just gonna bring that text right over here. Make it a bit larger. And I want Asheville, North Carolina just to be a small tagline, kind of like photography was. Let me even just take this away to show you what it would look like without it. I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but this can just be a logo all on its own, just to show you. Okay, so now with Mountain House, I'm going to look through some options of the Chez Núñez fonts. I kind of love this agave font. It's a little bit rustic. I wouldn't choose something like Beach Drive because that has a little bit more of a Miami vibe, and we're definitely going a little more of a hippie mountain vibe. General Store looks pretty cool. That could be a good option. Let's see. All right, typewriter's a great choice. I think I might go with agave. This one up here. And again, this is another font that has a different variation in our shop. So agave also has an italic version. So I kind of like the idea that Asheville, North Carolina can be italicized. I'm gonna bring out the kerning again, let Mountain House be larger, and I'm gonna select the whole thing and I'm going to center it. To create a little more space between Mountain House and Asheville, North Carolina, I can go over here and change the spacing just to give it a little bit more balance. And then because this is the cherry on top logo, we need to fill this space above Mountain House with some kind of illustration to give it a little bit more uniqueness. So I'm gonna go over here to our variety pack, and we have so many good options. I kind of love the sun. I'm just copying and pasting the illustration in. Let's see what else from this might work. I'm looking for an illustration that is a little bit more wide than it is tall. So something like this might be a little bit too unbalanced. Do you see how this is kind of creates a strange shape where it's it's wide and then it's very tall. It's just not quite what I'm looking for, although that could make a great little icon. Let's see. Maybe these little leaves would work nicely. And I could bring them over here and turn them, or I could separate them by ungrouping the shapes and I could add them to the sides. I'm not quite sure I like that though. Honestly, I love the sun. I think the sun matches the vibe of the type. It's a great little shape. There we go. And there we have our mountain house. So I'm gonna bring in another photo just to help us inspire an easy color palette. This might even be something that could work well on the photo. Just to invite somebody into that space if we were to use this on social media. There's a lot going on in the photograph though, so might want to be mindful of that. But let's see, maybe we'll do similar colors, but maybe we'll have a little bit more green in them. Something like that. And we can shrink these down because these are not going to be used. I'm just going to click on the rectangle tool and just explore what this might look like on this colored background if it was this darker shade of green. Oh yes, we need to center this as well. I like that. Looks great. And all this required was a strong font choice, a little variation for the tagline below, and then the addition of an illustrated icon right above it. And I didn't have to do any drawing right now. I just grabbed it from the options in the variety pack and brought it in so we don't forget. All right. And this could be a great icon if I wanted to pair it up with Mountain House. For some reason, I could perhaps have it be a story highlight icon as well. All right, so we've got our cherry on top logo design. And now we're just gonna move right along. I'm gonna move this down. Now we're gonna move right along to the stacked layout. So I'm just gonna bring this in, stacked layout. And the stacked layout is, as it sounds, you're just stacking the names one on top of the other. And for this one, I'm gonna do Flora Franz. And the reason why this name will work particularly well for this is because her first and last name are very similar in length. So for this one, I think our description of Flora Franz is she's very modern. She lives in a city, very polished style. I think the Montreal font might work lovely. And with the stacked layout, I like to work a lot with all caps just because it creates even more balance and symmetry. I'll create some spacing between the letters, center the paragraph. And right off the bat, I think this is very strong, but let's explore a few more of our options. I think the grace of the A gives it a very polished, modern vibe. But we'll go over to our Chez Núñez fonts and see what else we have to work with here. Seville might work, but that might be a little bit more vintage because of the serifs. Same with typewriter. I think the garden could work, but that would be a little bit more whimsical because of the flourishes. So I think Montreal is kind of a winner. That's the Chez Núñez Montreal font is the one we're working with. So I'm just putting this off to the side as a different option. All right, I think this is quite strong. I maybe would decrease the amount of space that's between the letters. But right off the bat, that looks great. So I'm just gonna bring in another one of my stock photos that I've taken. This one has a very blogger vibe to it. And I'm gonna use that photo to pull out a little color palette. I love that orangey color. Maybe I'll make it a little bit brighter, a little more peach. This will be a nice cream. And then maybe I'll have this be a dark brown. So these are great, very warm, inviting colors for this very kind, modern vlogger girl. And we can just see how this might look on this photo in white. I could already envision this being on the homepage of a blog. You can immediately start to picture what kind of person this is. Maybe I could play around with the placement. And the beauty of using a font like this to create this logo is that you can then go use the same font, but not capitalized and a little bit smaller spacing, and you could start to write, the descriptors for this person's website. So So we can write out Flora Franz's offerings, styling. Maybe she does design on the side. And we're just given a whole range of options of what we can do with this font. We want to play around with the color combination of our new palette. I might create a shape and then play around with the colors. All right, so we have our stacked layout of logo design. We have our cherry on top layout using an illustration. And then we have our straightforward layout, which is just, as it says, very straightforward. You could use honestly any one of these fonts for this kind of vintage film wildflower style of logo that we're working with. And now to save out these logos, I would just pull the logo design, group that together, and I would create artboards around these. You can make them larger or smaller, but now we have, shrink that a little. Now we have our designs neat and tidy on these new artboards that we've created. We've just selected the design, and artboard 6, 7, and 8 are our logos. So I would go over to export as, and then first and foremost, I would save them as transparent PNG files. Now just export high resolution, transparent PNG, and then I'd see them saved out right here. And these are just ready to go. They can be popped into a Squarespace site or your email marketing platform, and you can use these. EPS files would be great for vector or PNG files. You could save them as well just by hitting save as and remembering to save the artboard. But there you go. All this took is some Chez Núñez fonts and some graphics, and we have some logos that look very thoughtful and handcrafted with lots of love and give off a nice, unique vibe. I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching.